there's usually, often, not always, but often, some emotional aspect of an event or an illness has played a big part in why my client might be sitting in front of me with their uh, dis-ease in their body or dis-ease in their mind. And so, and there's a lot of, maybe they were sick, maybe someone else was sick, they had to care for it, but a lot of stress immediately went into the body. And by the time they see me, when we're going back to get to the root of why they're not well and not feeling good, um, there's always some kind of stress events that might have been catalysts and triggers. But now there's a lot of research going into that to talk about how that stress lives and lodges into the body. So it kept happening and happening. And so now I'm like, you know what? I need to get a clue. Maybe there's some research that can help me be better informed when this presents itself to me, right? And when I'm working with people. So then I started finding plenty of anecdotal stories. I started finding research. There are people who actually study the effect of illness trauma, and this whole body of work that's talking about connecting emotions lodged into the body after a traumatic event or after a stressful event, and how it manifests as disease, dis-ease, both physical and emotional, when it gets stuck in the body. So I was like, oh, whoa, it wasn't me just imagining it as I'm doing my own just intakes, but there are people working on this. So now I'm like, okay, well, now I've got this large reading list to sit in the evenings when I'm, quote, off the clock. And I started looking at the present need to check in with my people, my family, about the stress levels around the pandemic. Because when I was sick, I realized that stress did not make me feel good while I was sick. And I thought I heard the news in a different way. I heard a lot of things in a different way. That I was all, in the beginning, before being ill, I was sort of like, okay, I'll deal with that, I'll deal with it, deal with that. And this is why I want to bring this today. So this episode called Pandemic in Our Lives has changed everything about how we do just about everything. I mean, it's constantly changing, and probably each one of us uh, can't even count how many ways we have changed behaviorally, maybe emotionally, even physically, how we're out in the world. So from this perspective, I wanted to come in today and I wanted us to take a look at the narrative of the pandemic and ask you a couple of questions, and leave them in the comments because I can't see, I don't know how to hook up my restream to see it in real time. That's my next 2020 2022 goal. But anyway, so here are these questions, and I would love your feedback in the comments to know uh, how you see this as stress, if you see it as stress. And so just some feedback, because it's part of my informal research. And then after that, I'm going to share how I see well, first we're going to discuss the stressors, and then I'm going to talk about what I think is really key for all of us to take responsibility for, what we can actually change in terms of making sure we stay healthy, we keep our immunity up, and become as resilient as we possibly can in light of the fact that the virus is with us and our defenses need to be bolstered on a 360 kind of approach. So here we go. So have you ever considered your stress levels when you think about the pandemic? And if some of you are questioning the question, if you have stress around this pandemic, you might be like, okay, Andrea, I'm okay right now. But being as my friends know, inveterate little nudge that I can be, I'm going to say, are you sure? Are you really? Because answer me this, how often do you think about some aspect of this pandemic? So, in my opinion, the truth is we have very little respite from it. So, I'm going to list some things that I think are stressors living every day dealing with the pandemic. Number one, there are friends and family being sick and dying from COVID or some COVID-related complication. Number two, the unremitting loneliness of the pandemic is a big stressor, the disconnection from friends and family. That's what I mean by loneliness. Then dealing with kids in school, not in school, how to keep them in school, and how to keep their heads in the game. Understanding testing can be a real big stressor when you're sick, when you think you're sick, and how that's working in your immediate community and your society. Number five is understanding the quarantines and the timelines and the guidelines if you're exposed, if you're sick, not to mention the signs of when you can go back to work and what's considered well enough to go back. Have you recovered enough? Number six, deciding how to feel safe in general and how to catch a break from the pandemic. Where would you go? How do you do it? That's, trying to figure a way out. Number seven is how to show up at work. What's happening in your workplace as it resolves, as it deals with the pandemic. Then how's your employer dealing with the mandates and keeping other people safe? And what does that look like? And is there confusion in that space? So you have confusion at home, you have confusion at work. How are you as an employer keeping up with the ever-changing safety requirements and the timelines? So there's a stress if you're an employer, not to mention if you're an employee. Let's see. And then finally, there's the news. It's a 24/7 constant barrage of facts and figures that are never usually, shall we say, uplifting. There's the numbers of deaths, hospitalizations, who's infected, who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, and the blame game around vaccinated, not vaccinated. And instead of thinking about how do we keep people safe and healthy, we're busy making each other have more stress about your neighbor, your people around you. And then number 11 is everything I've missed. And you all can put it in there in the comments because I really would like to know what you're feeling as those stressors. So if none of these are issues for you and they're not coming up, please share how you're keeping yourself out of the weeds on this topic. We all would love to know. I'm looking for greater tools. I want to share them with my clients. But if on the other hand, you find yourself wanting to just wish it all away, which I'm in that camp, and wanting to escape the daily barrage of everything that has to do with COVID, if for a day, if for a few hours or whatever, we need to talk about what the reframes look like so we can exist with some level of calm. Now, all those stressors are doing all sorts of things to our hormones, that are doing all sorts of things to our health, which are doing all sorts of things to our immunity. So it's super important to me as your friend, as a person who's helping people through recovery, as someone, who's just really concerned about our psyches in general. We have to figure out ways to choose joy. I'm going to put it that way. Our minds are really under attack from the sheer volume of information we have to manage, sift, sort, just from this one thing called the pandemic. Not to mention, what's left over in our brains to deal with love, joy, family, all the good things that make us feel good. It's almost like we have to very intentionally create the space to feel good. So let's talk about that. Our heads are hurting, our hearts are hurting, our bodies are bravely trying to keep up the systems to keep going despite all of these immune dampening stressors. And it's a lot for the body to keep going under this constant, stressful and complicated emotional stuff surrounding the pandemic and life in general. So that being said, we all agree it's stressful. Now I'd like to say, go back to what are you doing to stay sane, joyful, and healthy? So if you're like, I'm not doing anything, or I'm doing whatever, put it in the chat. Let me know. I'd love to know because I have a long list of things that I have shared with others. I want to share with you today, and what's working for me. So here's what I'm doing. I work like a maniac on keeping my body, this vehicle, as healthy as possible. And how do I do it? Well, I am very keen to embrace and have my family embrace as much as possible a really strong anti-inflammatory menu. Some people say diet way of eating, but I always call it a menu when I talk about it. I'm really working on my sleep and the quality of my sleep. COVID did not help me sleep, and it's very been weird. And now I'm really trying to get back to sleeping well. I'm adding plenty of supplements that augment my body's immune system, so it's ready if it comes back again or whatever. Hopefully, no. The other thing that I really try to do is before noon, anywhere wherever you are, I try to spend 15 minutes in bright sunlight. And so my eyes take it in to help me sleep better and like deal with, your internal clock. So this is very important. And of course, just to get some vitamin D. The more skin you can expose, the better, because this is the best way for your body to make it so that you have it and to keep what up? Your immunity. And then just moving, really, moving helps us get our endorphins up. It exercise any kind of movement, that 15 minutes out in the sun, add another 15, get your 30-minute walk in every day. It does so much to recalibrate and reset your body. Other things that I do is like, some days you wake up and you're like, ah. So I start the day with a journaling exercise of the 10 things I'm grateful for. And I really, some days it's hard to put 10, but I write them down because this is a great way to, again, tamper or dampen that critter brain that wants you to complain and be miserable and unhappy. And so it's hard to be unhappy when you're writing what you're grateful for. And then, of course, if affirmations and prayers that help you believe you are succeeding and prevailing, right? Go share them with a friend. Everybody needs them. A friend just recently sent out this beautifully uplifting little message, and I was so grateful for it. And we need to do that for one another. Connect with the people you care about. Text, phone, doesn't matter. We need to connect more. That connection, that loneliness of not being able to see your friends when you want or how you want. So lean into sharing some goodness, your voice, leading with love and kindness. It goes a long way. And then there's the managing of stress and all those things I mentioned before. So how do we manage stress? And don't you hate when people just say, oh, manage your stress, and they don't give you any tips? I'm going to give you some tips. First, limit your intake of the news. I mean, that's very simple. I don't check my non-work email except once a day. I set a timer. If I don't get to all of it, that's the end of it, because bad news, bad mood. And then I have nothing left over to do my work. Then limit conversations with people who are complaining a lot. That's really simple. You have to be there for your loved ones, but if they're complaining and bringing you down, know that, set a timer and say, oh, happy to hear you're having your regular day, and move on. And set and share your boundaries with your friends and your family if you can. It is now time to actively engage in keeping yourself happy, sane, and joyful. And so share that this is your new strategy for doing that, right? And if you are so sad and nothing is bringing you joy, and you're showing and feeling signs of burnout and or depression, call somebody, get some help, have a friend help you get some help. There are a lot of people out there helping people who are stressed beyond belief, are burned out. I mean, think about our hospital workers. They're so burned out. So if you know somebody works in that kind of situation, reach out, be a good friend, spread some good news, because they could use it. And so then I'm really big in managing stress, brain clearing moments. So if it's meditation, breath work, or both, yes. One of my fun ones in these days is Wordle. Yeah, it's my new, I've always liked Word with friends, now Wordle. Okay, so geek out on something that has nothing to do with anything you're doing. Wordle I like because you can't do it for too long. You just, when you finish, you're finished. And then, seek out connections with your friends and family who make you laugh, make you feel good, They need to hear from you and you need to hear from them. And then last but not least, it's all about choosing joy, choosing love. These days, we have to consciously recognize the good, the beautiful, and the amazing around us and inside of ourselves and share that with others. That is going to be one way that we can psychically lift ourselves out of this situation. There are many physical things still ahead of us, but we can put our emotions behind that choosing joy, gratitude, and love so that we can get through this together. So, this was a very long Wellness Wednesday, but this has been on my heart and on my mind. And I was like, as soon as I have the breath in me to talk this long, I was going to do this today. So, with that, 2022 can be a great year, shall be a great year. We will choose to make it a great year by helping one another. So with that, good night, everybody. I made this late, but anyway, it's been my pleasure to share that. I hope it's been helpful, and I will check you guys later. All right, take care, everybody. Good night.